This morning I want to ask you to do a difficult thing. I'd like for you to try to lay aside for a few minutes all the things that happened to you last week and let them rest. And then as well to see if you can clear your mind of worries about what's getting ready to happen to you next week. And spend just a few minutes with me now thinking about the reading from St. Luke's Gospel that was our second lesson this morning. It's a familiar story, I'm sure, to us all. Who amongst us has not heard the story of Lazarus and the rich man, not just once or twice, but no doubt dozens of times over the course of our life? It's bound to be familiar, but I wonder sometimes whether we can appreciate how important the story is and how much there is for people like us to learn from this story. It's one of the most important, I think, anyway, one of the most important stories that we're ever going to hear while we're down here in this mortal sphere going through our years. And I want to tell you, if I can, or try to tell you, why I think it is so important and why it is so important for us to attend to it while we still have the opportunity. What gives this story its importance and its relevance and its gravity, its power, is the simple fact that the teller of this story is not just anybody. The teller of this story is Jesus of Nazareth. And I know that there are tons of people in this world for whom Jesus of Nazareth doesn't amount to a hill of beans, and there are zillions of people who never give his teaching even a first thought, much less a second thought. But for us, when I say us, I mean for those of us who are in this tradition, who have been a part of the Christian community, sometimes for all of our lives, for us, Jesus is not just another clever guy. He is not just, another gifted teacher. For us, he's always been more than that. For us, he is, we might say, the living, breathing image of God parsed out in human form, which is sort of my way of saying that whatever else we may think about Jesus, he is, there is in him, we can see in him everything that is essential for us to know about who God is and how this world that God made is. There might be a lot of things that we would like to know, and it would be interesting as can be to know, but what is essential for us to know is shown in him and in his teachings, which means that if we are at some point in our life when we are wondering about big questions, wondering about things that are important, like, what is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? Where am I bound? Where did I come from? Is it possible to find the peace of God that passes all understanding, or is that just a hoax? Is it possible to live with a measure of joy in your life? All of those big questions are questions that Jesus himself was acutely interested in. And so our people, we have always, as it were, turned and as like sunflowers, how they, when in the sun, they turn during the course of the day and they try to keep themselves pointed towards the sun. We also try to turn ourselves and listen to what he has to say, precisely because of who he is. And what he has to say is, for the most part, embedded in stories. You can look at the whole gospel sort of tradition as one large story, but within that large story, there are smaller stories, parables, we might say. And our reading for today is one of those stories. My thought is that somewhere in those stories, there is a great treasure buried, not just any treasure, but the secret of your life and my life is in some fashion embedded in these stories, and the answers to the deep questions which we have as human beings are embedded in these stories. They are hidden after a fashion, but they can be found. And our part of the puzzle is to look at those stories, to listen to them, and then dig for the treasure, and dig like it means something. Dig like it matters whether we find something for all of our efforts. And happily, some stories are easier than others to plumb, to look down into. But this one this morning, although it is a sad story and hard to, in some ways, to hear, there are some things in this story that are acutely relevant to any thinking person, it seems to me. Take, for example, this matter of dying. I would suspect that there's not a single soul in this room who has never wondered, what exactly is dying? What does that mean? Or more to the point, is there anybody here who has never wondered, what is going to happen to me when I die, when I leave this world? It's a big kind of question. And Jesus certainly has some response to that. And part of the response to that question in particular is embedded in this story. And if we listen to the story, maybe with new ears, or maybe with old ears, just more acutely, one of the things that we can see and one of the things that we can hear is that Jesus has a very particular vision about that one issue and a very particular thought. And his vision is that although for us, normally, dying is an ending, it is a breach, a stoppage. For Jesus, dying is really a part of living. It is a stage of life. To die simply means to him, I shouldn't say simply because it's never simple, really. But from his point of view, dying is like passing from one form of life to another form of life. It's like going through an open door from one room into another room. In this story, as you remember, Lazarus and the rich man die. Their hearts stop beating. They no longer breathe. Their bodies stop, but they do not stop. Both Lazarus and the rich man, instead, they leave this world. They leave here and they arrive there. Now, where is this there? Part of the thought is that in Jesus' vision of things, this is not the only world. We may think it is. We may, in fact, hope it is. But it is not. In Jesus' vision of the world, embedded in this story, there is this world, but there is another world that is full of life, that is immense, beyond our imagining, real, more real than this, stronger, powerful, another whole world. And dying is, in his vision, passing through the portal. It is like passing through a passageway, a gateway from one realm to another. So the rich man and Lazarus are carried along by this great river, and they wind up in, much to their surprise, no doubt, in this other world. So also with us. We want to make that connection between them and us. So for us also, we are carried along by the same great river and carried along toward the same great destination. The river of life bears us all along, all of us, the good ones, the bad ones, the saints, the sinners, the ruffians, the wonderful people, the whole kit and caboodle. We are all born by the same river toward the same shore. And on that shore, by the power of God, if we hear our Lord's word, we are all going to arrive alive quite alive. Maybe we arrive shocked and surprised. Maybe we're going to arrive sad. Maybe we're going to be very happy. The point is that we are going to arrive alive. And if we listen further, we can see that the rich man, this is disconcerting, I have to say. But in the story, the rich man arrives on that far shore not only alive, but he arrives essentially unchanged. He passes through the gateway of death, and when he arrives in the new world, that other world, he's the same old guy he's always been. Dying has not made him wiser, has not made him better, has not made him smarter, has not enabled him to see further. He is self-absorbed in this world, and if you read the story closely, he is self-absorbed in the world to come. He is cold of heart of heart in this world, and arrives in the new world still hard of heart. And he arrives in the new world the living embodiment of all the decisions that he has made while he was here. Between the time he was born and the time he died, he made a multitude of decisions, and those decisions formed who he became, who he essentially was. He's like Scrooge. He forms his own essential self link by link over the course of his life. And sure enough, as the story goes, he dies. His purple robe is gone. You know, his big house is gone. That wall around his house with the big gate, that gate is gone also. His bank account with all those big numbers, that's gone too. His heavy laden dinner table is gone. His social circle is gone. His manservant is gone. His maidservant is gone. His body is gone. But he is not. He is still there. So dying has stripped all the things that are not essential away and left the only truly essential thing, which is him, the person that he has become in the course of his life. And sadly, as Jesus' story holds it, you know, he arrives the same, he arrives alive, and he arrives to find agony and torment waiting for him, which we may take to mean that in Jesus' understanding of things, the decisions that we make while we are here in this mortal sphere, for good or for ill, these decisions have consequences. We may wish like crazy that they didn't have consequences, but if we listen to him, they do have consequences. Consequences that are bound to work themselves out in the life which we are bound to live beyond the portal. While he was in this world, the rich man's cold heart was not moved by Lazarus' loneliness, his comfort, was not disturbed by Lazarus' struggle with the dogs for his food. His sleep was not made restless by the fact that Lazarus had no place to lay his head. His appetite was not diminished by Lazarus' hungry eyes. His wallet was not made, 1 ounce lighter by the fact that Lazarus didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. And so no doubt now, much to his great surprise, the rich man finds out in the end what a dangerous, fearsome thing it was to allow his heart to become hard and cold while he was down here. He finds out to his great regret that there are consequences after all. Now maybe it's too late for this rich man. Maybe it's not too late. It's hard to tell. The story ends ambiguously. But they're ambiguous or not, there are still some things that we can take away for our own selves, and I think are important to take away. For me, the most important thing is that we hear, and we really hear, with our heart, not just with our ears, our Lord's teaching that hardness of heart in all its forms is a terrible thing. Coldness of heart is a disease of the soul, greatly to be feared. It is to the soul what a malignant tumor is to a body. So I think what that means is that
Above all else and at all cost, while we're here and we still have breath in us and still have life in us, we want to set our hearts and our minds on the practice of the one thing that is a true antidote to hardness of heart, which is, as I tried to say last time I was up here, the true antidote is the actual practice of loving kindness. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing more extravagant or special, but simple human kindness towards all those souls that we share this world with now, without exceptions, with the good ones and the bad ones, the deserving and the undeserving, the saints and the sinners alike. It's not our job to sort out the good from the bad, the deserving from the undeserving. That's someone else's job. But we have a special calling. We have a special piece of work to do. Our job is always to do the same thing, day in, day out, to keep our eyes fixed on the one unchanging teaching of Jesus, and to keep our feet on the one unchanging path, which has to do with the practice of human kindness, above all else and below all else, no matter what. So that when our turn comes, as indeed, as everybody knows, sooner or later our turn comes, and we're going to make the same journey that Lazarus and the rich man made. We're going to be carried by the same river to the same destination. And so we want to be living in such a way that when we do in fact wind up and land up on the same shore with our brother Lazarus, we won't be surprised that he, as the story goes, he ends up, so to speak, washes up. What is the song? The song, rocking in the bosom of Abraham and living in God's shining light. So that is our destiny. That is where we are aiming. And the practice of human kindness is the path. So I hope we will be able to take that to heart and meditate on that a little bit as the coming week unwinds. Amen.